Hello, welcome to Now Europe program. Our guest today is David McAllister, member of the European Parliament, chairing the Committee on Foreign Affairs. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me.
Our pleasure. In Strasbourg, your annual report on the implementation of the Common Foreign and Security Policy for 2024 was adopted. What were Europe's major three successes and three major collapses?
Well, first of all, I'm happy that the CFSP report once again received such a large majority in the plenary. It is quite a difficult exercise to go through the entire global policy area and then in the end get a majority across political party lines. In general, we are living in extremely geopolitically shifting times. That's obvious. The world is changing in a rapid speed. These are changes we haven't witnessed in Europe since 1989, 1990, and the European Union needs to adapt. The European Union is not a global player. We need to be more united, more coherent, more determined, more disciplined and more assertive in our foreign and security policy. So this is the main message of the European Parliament, that we call on our 27 member states that we need to get our act together. And if you look back the last few years, if there's one policy field where the European Parliament has always been way ahead of the debate, then it was European security and defence. We have always called on the member states that we need to spend more on security and defence, that we need to do more for security and defence in Europe, and that we need to do this more together. And that we now are witnessing a situation where we are actually going to spend more, but we need to spend the taxpayers' money more effectively. And that means for us, do more together as Europeans and also to buy more in Europe.
So coming back to successes and less successful initiatives, so maybe not free and free, but maybe in general, I think generally you also partly answer this question, because you are saying that Europe has not been that successful in becoming the global player.
Okay, answering your questions, three positive examples, three not so positive examples. The positive examples, first of all, our united support for Ukraine. Never before have we supported a third country economically, financially, in a humanitarian way and militarily like Ukraine, because the brave women and men in Ukraine are not only defending their own country and their own people, but they are defending the European peace and security architecture. Second example, we have a new momentum in the enlargement policy. Enlargement for a long time has been an underestimated geopolitical tool of the European Union. We are bringing the 6 countries of the Western Balkans, we are bringing Moldova and Ukraine forward to becoming a member at one day of our European family. And a third example I would like to say is that after Brexit, relations between the European Union and the United Kingdom, we had a bumpy spell, to put it in moderate terms, but now clearly there is momentum on both sides that, especially when it comes to security and defence, we can work more closely together than originally planned by the previous UK government. Three not so positive examples. Well, first of all, it's less about us that are to blame for these developments, but I would say that the deterioration of transatlantic relations is, of course, a heavy burden. We in Europe are very much interested in maintaining a strong transatlantic alliance, but obviously this new Trump administration in Washington has very different priorities. They see the European Union in a very different way than we were used to by previous US administrations, and that's why, because the transatlantic alliance is changing in an unfortunate way, we have to strengthen the European pillar within NATO, and we have to do more for ourselves. And when it comes to dealing with the Trump administration, Europe will always be in a better position if we are united, if we are self-confident, and if we know exactly how we can engage. Other difficulties I see, we are not always united on foreign policy issues. We have the unanimity principle in the European Union. I fully understand that member states, including Poland, are very sensitive when it comes to this. But on the other hand, when it comes to sanctions, we often have the situation that 25, 26 member states are in favor, and it's Hungary that's blocking. So we need to find a new method how the 25, the 26 willing can move forward without one single country blocking us.
Okay, maybe about enlargement, because we have had a discussion about enlargement for quite many years. Now new countries are on the radar here that you mentioned. But what's the real perspective that you see when the enlargement might happen, and would it be a Big Bang one, or country by country or region by region? How do you see that?
Well, the last member state that joined the European Union was in 2013, Croatia. We now have 2025, and already 12 years have passed. This is the second longest phase in the history of the European Union without a new member state joining our community. The longest spell was from 1957 to 1973. Before then, the United Kingdom, Ireland and Denmark joined the European Economic Community in 1973. Enlargement is a merit-based process. That means every country needs to be judged individually. Enlargement is a regatta, not a convoy. And that's why, if you look at the enlargement countries, they are sailing at very different speeds towards EU membership. I can't name a precise date, but Montenegro in the moment is the front runner. The Montenegrin government wants to be number 28 in 2028. This is a very ambitious goal, but on the other hand, if you are a government of a candidate country, why not try to set ambitious goals? So I strongly believe that we will see new members in the upcoming years. But a country can only, of course, join the European Union once it is actually ready. In the meantime, what we have to do as European Union is we need to get enlargement ready ourselves. That means we now should really use the time until we have new member states to reform our institutions and to make the way we conduct policy in the European Union more effective.
In the report that we started from, your annual report on the common foreign and security policy for the last year, you underlined the importance of the protection of the EU's eastern border, which contributes to the security of the entire EU. You also stressed that the East Shield and the Baltic defense line should be the flagship EU projects. How does it translate into real declarations? Of course, it's very important as we are from Poland.
Well, obviously, our Eastern European EU member states are in a different position than, let's say, Portugal or Spain, simply because of geography. You are bordering with Belarus. So Mr. Putin has great power fantasies. He is inclined to provoke further aggression, and he wants to destabilize Europe in the long term. And that's why, first and foremost, we need a peace with security guarantees for Ukraine. This is the only sustainable solution I see. And then we need to get ready to effectively deter the Russian aggression. And that's why the eastern flank of NATO, the eastern flank of the European Union, is of such crucial importance. And that's why we are in this together. And as I say, Article 5, NATO, is the holy article for all members. And we have an equivalent in Article 42 in the Treaty on European Union. So we are ready to support Poland, the Baltics, Romania, Slovakia and other countries, and we're in this together.
But do you think it's a support of Poland, or isn't it a support for the whole European Union?
It's a support of the whole European Union and the entire NATO alliance. An attack on one is an attack on all of us.
Hopefully others also share this approach, others also across the pond in the US. Coming back to the East Shield, Law and Justice abstained from supporting your resolution. They point at the growing federalization of the EU as a threat. One of the MEPs said that the European Commission is led by one of the weakest former defense ministers of Germany that left Bundeswehr in shambles, so that they cannot agree to give out supervision of our potential joint military for incompetent bureaucrats. What's your take on that?
Well, this is the usual peace propaganda. I would have expected nothing else coming from them. By the way, they are repeating their same lines to take every year, perhaps as a form of innovation. They might want to add something new to their standard lines they take. Defense is a competence of the member states. The member states, Germany, France, Poland, they are responsible for financing their militaries and for giving their militaries the best possible equipment. The European Union has no competences in defense, and nobody has ever said so. But when it comes to defense and security cooperation, the European Union can play a crucial role, especially in better coordinating our defense industry. What we need to do in the next months and years, and it is pressing because we need to take these intelligence reports very seriously, that the Russian Federation might be able to attack a European NATO member state by 2029, 2030. We have to massively pile up our munition stocks. We have to massively invest in our armies, in our air forces, in our navies. We will get much better prices, and that means a better spending of taxpayers' money if we purchase military equipment together, not individually. So joint research, joint procurement of military equipment is key. For the first time, the European Commission has appointed a commissioner dedicated to defense, Andrius Kubilius, the former Prime Minister of Lithuania. And he is responsible for coordinating our European defense industries. The problem is, in the moment, that 80% of all defense equipment bought by EU member states is bought outside of the European Union, 80%. Now, I know that you can't change this from one day to the other, from 1 month to the other, from 1 year to the other, but we need to invest much more in our own European defense industries, because then these massive additional investments will also be a boost for our own economy, and this will also lead to a better strategic autonomy, a better strategic sovereignty of us in Europe. So this is what it's all about. And the European Parliament has always been way ahead in the debate on these issues. We were calling for a Commissioner for European Defence years ago. And now with this white paper, Mr. Kubilius presented together with the High Representative Kaja Kallas 2 weeks ago, we kind of see a roadmap, what we are going to do in the next 2, 3, 4 years towards a European Defence Union. And last argument, I would urge all member states, including my own country, home country Germany, which is going to spend 500 billion euros in the next 10 years on military equipment. Let's try and think as much as possible in a European way. We need the big European projects, including, for instance, a European air shield or a European drone army or other big projects which we can do much better together than on our own.
On the Polish right and far right, there's opposition against the incurring of further common debt. They point that in the recovery and resilience facility, the funds were earmarked for the specific countries in national envelopes, while for the time being, there is no such thing in place for solution regarding the new plans for debt. They would wish for specific funds for bunkers, dragon teeth reinforcements, etc. So I'm just repeating it because these are arguments that we hear a lot, and it's not only from the right on the Polish scene.
Well, two plans have been presented. On the one hand, the Rearm Europe plan, which is now called Readiness 2030 plan by Ursula von der Leyen. And on the other hand, we have the white paper on European defence readiness. So we have two documents, and now it's up to the member states to analyse these two documents and then to decide how they want to implement the made proposals. And this, of course, includes the financing. We are not at the end of the debate yet. We have to have a careful look. What can member states do and what can the European Union do additionally? The Rearm Europe Readiness 2030 plan of Ursula von der Leyen could mobilise in the end up to 800 billion euros. But of course, most of this money needs to be spent and invested and financed at national level. And here the European Commission is ready to ease the restrictions when it comes to making further debts. But there are some member states who are not in such an economic advantaged position that they say, but this doesn't really help us. We want the European Union to spend money itself or to take the loans and then give it forward to the member states. We simply haven't had the time yet to discuss this at the level of national leaders, but certainly once the German government has been formed, the new German government, there will be a debate at council level, that's for sure.
The other problem within this context is that some solutions, equipment and products will be prioritized from other countries, not from the countries of the politicians that provide arguments against these European defense solutions. So that, for example, there is a East Shield plan, and the fear is that some solutions equipment will be bought from, not the Polish providers, but from, not even if not from the US, then from France, from Germany, and it won't benefit our local capabilities.
Let me put it this way. And now is a crucial moment for collective security in Europe. It's serious. It's very serious. And I think that the Polish people probably know best how serious the situation is. We need to simply talk less in Europe, and we need to do more. And from my view, Europe must address three key issues to strengthen our defence capabilities. First, we must rapidly close the defence spending gap and agree on ambitious targets. We all know it will be much more than 2% GDP. This needs to be discussed at NATO level, and I guess the NATO summit this summer will lead the way forward. And as Secretary General Mark Rutte said, it will probably be defence spending north of 3%. Poland, and I can only commend the Polish government for these brave decisions, is with 4% defence spending already the positive front-runner in Europe. Second, we must address the fragmentation of national planning and procurement efforts. The relevant regulations, the transfers within the European Union and the approval process should be harmonized across Europe. We are wasting too much time and we are losing too much money. And the third point is we must allocate our resources more intelligently through better interoperability, common standards, and comprehensive support for the European defence industry. Unfortunately, the European defence industry remains fragmented. And that's why this is so important that we adopt the European Defence Industrial Development Programme, EDIP, quickly, and that we see progress on the joint flagship military projects I mentioned, air shield, satellite reconnaissance, or cyber defense. This is what we need to do in Europe. The individual decisions about what kind of tanks and what kind of battleships and what kind of cyber programs this will all be decided at a national level, but please, we need to think the bigger picture. We are in this together. And I strongly believe that at the end of the road, we will have something like joint integrated European armed forces. But that is something we will decide in years to come. But the first step needs to be that we pool and share, and that we have interoperable defense equipment. That is our biggest challenge in Europe.
The final question, if I may. I remember that after the full-scale invasion of Russia against Ukraine, everyone was commenting that finally NATO is regaining its sense of existence and that it is a wake-up call. Chancellor Scholz announced even the Zeitenwende and sent helmets that right-wingers still mock at every possible occasion. Now Trump has come back to the White House. I see that wake-up calls wake up only the ones that weren't asleep.
Well, indeed, the Eastern Europeans have always been much more awake than perhaps the Western Europeans. We should have listened much earlier to the Eastern Europeans who were repeatedly warning us after the illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014 how dangerous the agenda of the dictator in the Kremlin is. And yes, there were quite some in Western European countries who underestimated the evilness and the danger of the dictator in the Kremlin. Poland has the presidency of the European Union now, and I believe that the Polish presidency is ideally suited to advance the priorities I was talking about: a closer cooperation on foreign affairs, a closer cooperation in security and defense as quickly as possible. I would like to once again commend the leadership of the Polish government. I've participated in a number of meetings during this Polish presidency. Very effective, very experienced, very skilled diplomats. That is very positive because we have seen in the last few years some other presidencies who, I'll put it in diplomatic terms, were not quite as effective. I am a strong believer in the transatlantic alliance. I believe there is no other country in the world which is so important for us in Europe as the United States. Politically, militarily, and also economically, we are each other's leading trade partner by far. Unfortunately, this US administration, this current US administration, obviously has a different view on Europe. We do not react. Let's put it this way. We should try to remain transatlantic, but at the same time, we need to become much more European. And this is really the answer the national leaders need to give. Do we want to continue in Europe as member states with some of this unnecessary nitty-gritty, or are we really realizing that this geopolitical shift we are going through really is now the final call for Europe to get its act together? Only if we stand together as Europeans, we are in a position to negotiate at eye level with other powers, say the United States or China. If we believe that we can do this better individually, all national leaders need to realize we're all small countries. It doesn't matter if you're from Malta, from your very small country, if you're from a medium-sized country as Austria, or if you're from a large country like France, Germany, or Poland. Compared to others, we are all small countries. Only together are we strong.
Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you very much.